Hello, I'm Quatrina, and thank you for joining us on Quatrina on News, which is where we decode and you get to decide. Major movement has been taking place in the past few hours after a relatively quiet weekend regarding the Iran and US war. And one of the main things that we were waiting for was for Iran to respond officially to the counter-proposal that had been sent to Iran via Pakistan by the United States. Iran has now responded. They sent in their proposal on Sunday, and that has now been forwarded to the United States by Pakistan. Pakistan has kept a tight lid on the contents of these proposals that have been going back and forth in order to create an environment and give space to diplomacy, because we can't have these issues being discussed out on social media or in the mainstream media for that matter, because that potentially could put a lot of pressure on all the participants, be it Iran, the United States, and Israel, which is definitely hitherto ignored element in this equation. But we're going to talk in extensive detail because Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has come up with a new statement today, literally just a couple of hours ago, that we will talk about. Now, some of the important things that have happened that led up to this exchange of messages and Iran's response, which, by the way, was expected on Friday. So it came in on Sunday, and that was giving pretty much everybody heartburn. And an important issue over here to mention is that the supreme leader of Iran, Ayatollah Mustafa Khamenei, has not been seen since he took the supreme office after the assassination of his father. Well, apparently in the last few days, he has held meetings, first with Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian, and today, apparently, he had a meeting with the commander of the Khatibul al-Anbiya. And that is significant because this person is the commander-in-chief of all of Iran's armed forces, including the IRGC, as well as the Basij and the other organizations that will be there. And the interesting points that have been reported, and this is now coming from Iran's press TV, and they point out that structural change is the equation of deterrence. What I see in that is that they are saying that what was going on in the past is no longer what is going to be going on in the future. For example, they go on to elaborate that the conventional warfare that the United States has been conducting, which has been vessel to vessel, missile to missile, is now not the way that they're going to go forward. Iran has been fighting an asymmetrical war, and that has been to their great success. And they're now talking about this being a structural change, and that there are new surprises. The phrase was used of new surprises, which means that Iran potentially has some other unconventional ideas and plans up its sleeve. We didn't really see how their swarms of gunboats would actually create havoc in the Strait of Hormuz as they have in the past 2 or 3 days, and they have been reasonably effective. So they're basically saying, we don't need to match you ship for ship and battle cruiser to battle cruiser. And that's an interesting perspective. And another interesting thing that has come out from Iran, and this is really, really important. While Iran has sent forward its proposals for negotiations, they are absolutely preparing for war. They have absolutely no faith that the United States will uphold its end or accept Iran's counter-proposals. Have the positions been at all flexible? It's really important to remember that both positions will take a maximalist position at the start. And then they move towards the middle ground, which is the meeting ground, where agreements can actually be hammered out. We haven't seen that kind of flexibility yet. And from either side, the United States has still had a very aggressive posture, as does Iran. And has this eased a bit? It's not clear. But Iran's reiteration that we do not trust the United States to negotiate in good faith is a massive stumbling block to the peace process to continue. Now, interestingly, the Qatari Prime Minister, who has not really been involved in negotiations in these past 2 months, but has been an ally of Iran in prior negotiations along with Oman. And the Qatari Prime Minister, Mohammed bin Abdul Rahman bin Jassim Al Thani, flew to the United States and met with Vice President Vance, Secretary Rubio, and also Mr. Witkoff. And he flew straight back to Qatar right after these meetings. So this was just to have this face-to-face meeting, and it is assumed that he has also possibly laid out the reality to the United States. And it is important to note that before he left, he had an extended phone conversation with Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, and as soon as he returned from the United States, he had another extensive conversation with Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif. So Pakistan continues to be involved because Pakistan is the only other country privy to the contents of the proposals going back and forth. So Qatar has now entered and is possibly trying to convince the United States to, I would hope, be a little bit more flexible in the stance that they have taken. We will talk about the politics of that and why everybody is holding so firmly to their positions, because that is significant. Now, when I said that Iran is prepared for war, they've also upped the rhetoric. I mean, President Trump said something so utterly outrageous a couple of days ago that all of us were, I don't know, not surprised, because nothing he says surprises us anymore. But he actually, in response to a reporter's question, says, if there are no talks, you'll see a big glow over Iran. A direct, clear message that he is willing to at least talk about using a nuclear weapon on Iran. That's not how you negotiate at the point of a gun. I mean, we've said this over and over again, and now it's talking about negotiating under the threat of nuclear annihilation. I know everybody keeps saying Trump is Trump and Trump will do what Trump does, but that doesn't make Iran feel any more comfortable. So should we take with all seriousness President Trump's threats, or should we just dismiss it? If you were in Iran's place, how would you feel? Well, then I'm not surprised at this statement that came out from Iran, where they said that the threat is to enemy vessels that harass Iranian ships, and then further added that American centers are also within the crosshairs. Now, the phrase American centers, I assume, refers to American positions in and around the Gulf states. There is no other explanation for it. Iran does not have the capacity to reach any other American installation anywhere else except in the Middle East. Well, Israel, Jordan, and the Gulf states. So we're going to have to see what that they really meant by that. And then subsequent phases would include strikes on Zionist centers in occupied territories, the facilities of American Persian Gulf allies. So this is difficult to decode because Iran is speaking somewhat elliptically, and the United Arab Emirates has now emerged as a staunch ally of the United States as well as Israel. And that has somewhat changed the equation between the GCC countries and everyone else, because earlier we referred to the GCC as sort of a monolithic entity comprising of Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, Oman, and the UAE. But now we have to remove UAE from that equation. And remember, the UAE is physically closest to Iran. And so that is something that we have to consider. And then Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian, not known for his rhetoric, he tends to keep a pretty low kind of profile on these things. He had an interesting statement to make. He says on X, "We will never bow our heads before the enemy. And if we talk of dialogue or negotiation arises, it does not mean surrender or retreat. The goal is to uphold the rights of the Iranian nation and to defend national interests." So Mr. Pezeshkian, Dr. Pezeshkian, I should say, is also upholding Iran's sovereignty and the rights of its people. Iran is unlikely to change its stance on some of the issues that the United States is demanding. Now, for the past 3 days, you may have been watching the news and seen that there have been missile strikes and drone strikes. Some ships have been struck, haven't been struck. This has all been going on, sporadic skirmishes, which both sides have said is not something that is war. Iran, of course, says this is enemy aggression. The United States say the ceasefire is holding. We're going to have to leave it there because what strikes me here is that despite these exchanges of missiles and despite the hostilities in the Strait of Hormuz, the fact that the ceasefire is holding means that both countries are looking for diplomacy as an equal partner to military interventions. And this is important to consider because if there was no desire to talk, then Iran would have possibly not sent back its proposal, or the United States would have said, no talks, the deal is off, and it's going to be war. None of that has happened. So that gives me hope. So I was talking about what gives me hope, but before I carry on further down that track, what I would really appreciate would be if you could please subscribe to my channel, share and like if you like the content, so that we get more followers, more viewers, and are able to expand our digital footprint. And I would really, really appreciate your also leaving some comments telling us what you think about the content and what you would like to see me cover further. Now, when I talk about what gives me hope is diplomacy. Because the only way out of a crisis as serious as the one that we are facing for the past 70 days is diplomacy. And I would argue that war is far easier than diplomacy. So why are the positions so fixed in stone? Well, there's some things that neither side will compromise on. And those things really need to be set to the side right now. That is crucial. I know that President Trump is fixated on getting some concessions from Iran regarding the nuclear question. What I do think is important for him and the US administration to recognize right now is that this is not a zero-sum game. There are options within the nuclear question that they can be looking at. Iran is unlikely to compromise on its right to enrich uranium. They may commit not to do it for 10 years or 12 years, but they will not give up the right. That is an important distinction because basically what Iran is saying is we've signed the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. You can't treat us differently from other countries because today if they accept that they're not protected by the NPT despite being signatories, then why would they be protected by any other treaty that they sign? So the wording is going to be incredibly important going forward. Iran could commit not to enrich, but they will not give up their right to enrich. Will Iran hand over all the enriched uranium? Well, they might, or they may agree to dilute it and allow international inspectors from the International Atomic Agency to come and inspect that it has been diluted, and maybe experts from other countries to verify that. All of this is possible, but President Trump has to step back from his zero-sum game and reach some kind of agreement on that. There is a major spoiler in this, and I'm going to tell you all about that, but later on. The other thing that everybody, of course, wants to see happen instantly is the opening of the Strait of Hormuz. And that has really never been an issue. Right after the Islamabad talks, Foreign Minister Arakchi from Iran had said the Strait of Hormuz is open. But unfortunately, that was misinterpreted, and President Trump went on to say that the Strait of Hormuz is open forever. That hardened the Iranian position. Now they say that they will retain some form of control of the Strait of Hormuz, whether that's in the form of a tax, a toll being paid by ships that use it, or what they have in mind. I guess we'll only know when we see more of what the Iranian proposal entails. Can it go back to what it was on February 26th? Ideally. And again, that entails people softening their positions. Everyone is dealing with their domestic constituencies. President Trump is very conscious of the fact that his ratings are now lower than any other president at this time during their terms. So this is a really, really serious crisis for President Trump in which he has to show some kind of win. He can't be seen to be losing, even though now it is generally considered that the U.S. has lost this war with Iran. There is no other way to look at it. The U.S. has not achieved any of their stated goals. So Iran has to throw them a bone. Iran really has to understand that he also is not all-powerful and needs to answer to his own people. Iran, of course, has a relatively unified government, but there are definitely people within the Iranian government that have more extreme positions than others. And to describe that as a fractured government is unrealistic, because that's clearly not what the situation is. What we are actually seeing is that there wasn't one person holding Iran together like Saddam Hussein held Iraq together. So when they got rid of Saddam Hussein or Muammar Gaddafi, the countries fell apart. Iran is a far wider, stronger net of leaders. And I think this is something that nobody really understood, that it was not Ayatollah Khamenei who was the one person whose absence would destroy Iran's government and Iranian society. That didn't happen. We know now why it didn't happen, because Israel really pushed the United States into this war and made all kinds of promises that were unrealistic, unattainable, and everybody knew it except perhaps the American administration. There has been an interesting report in an Israeli newspaper, and I think that we need to talk about that. And that report basically implied that Israel was planning this whole Iran plan upwards of more than a year and a half ago. They were actually physically had started putting in funds and allocating people to try and create an uprising in Iran by the people. And furthermore, President Trump openly acknowledged that they had armed the Kurd minority, hoping that they would pass those arms on to the Iranian resistance when the time came. It didn't happen, and I wonder where those weapons are now. But now to come to what I call the spoiler in the game, which is going to be extremely significant. And that is, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu just gave an interview to 60 Minutes. And his statements coming out of that, and I just have a brief outline because I haven't seen all of it, it literally just came out a couple of minutes ago, is not very helpful. He says, the war is not over. The war will not be over until the enriched uranium is removed. And then he goes on to say that the issue of Iranian proxies, which is him referring to the Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthis, they have to be brought under control. The ballistic missiles have to be removed, or whatever else he wants done with them. Enrichment sites must be removed, and the ability, he says, of the ballistic missile program and everything else has been downgraded. So when he was pressed on this by the 60 Minutes interviewer and said, have you spoken to President Trump? And he said, yes. President Trump told him, I want to go in there and remove the enriched uranium. And this, we don't know when Trump said that to him, because we do know that there was a misadventure which was now widely known that the Americans tried to go into Iran and get hold of the enriched uranium. That plan to rescue the pilot or the pilots was really a cover to enter Iran and try and extract, steal the enriched uranium. Well, here's the point here. It didn't work. And the United States ended up losing 2 C-130 aircraft, 1 F-35, 1 or 2 helicopters. For what? It's unrealistic to think that you're going to waltz into a country like Iran and walk away with the enriched uranium. And this is something that I want everybody to think about. Netanyahu has been saying Iran is 10 days away, 2 weeks away, 1 month away, 5 days away from a nuclear weapon for the past 20 years. I've heard them say this over and over and over again. Clearly, he is wrong. Because if Iran wanted a nuclear weapon and was on the verge of making a nuclear weapon 10 times, then why didn't they? Because Iran has repeatedly said it is not making a nuclear weapon. Now, if the world chooses to believe Benjamin Netanyahu's claims, which have turned out to be lies for the past 20 years, there's nothing we can do about it. But why does the world not want to believe Iran when as far back as 12 years ago, they have been saying that they're committed to not making a nuclear weapon? They have signed the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. They have opened up the facilities to international inspection. Has Israel done any of that? Do they have nuclear weapons? Sure they do. Do they have inspectors? No, they don't. So how can you get away with this double standard? And Israel's constant push against Iran is not going to stop at Iran. We know it's not going to stop in Iran. They have ambitions that go way wider than Iran. And Iran, frankly, is right now the wall that is standing against Israeli expansion. Just yesterday, Israel killed 24 people in southern Lebanon. 24, including 2 mothers and their children. Israel's attacks in Lebanon have continued unabated since they started this invasion into South Lebanon. They have even attacked Beirut in these past 3 days. And let me guarantee something for you. If negotiations go ahead, if peace talks go ahead, please pray for the people of Lebanon, because Israel is going to do anything in its power to derail peace negotiations. This is an opportunity of a lifetime for them. They know that they're not going to get it again. And it saddens me that everybody is willing to think the worst of Iran and the best of Israel, when it is very obviously true that it should be the other way around. Seriously, Iran enriched its uranium to 60% between 2018 and 2026. What was stopping them from enriching it to 90% and making a nuclear weapon? Nothing. They have the ability, they have the skill, they have the knowledge. They haven't done it because they are committed to not doing it. Does the United States really want to force Iran into a situation where they will build a nuclear weapon? Because that's exactly what I would do if I was in the Iranian leadership. That's the only thing that's going to get attention if the U.S. doesn't back off and accept that Iran is dealing in good faith. When they have given their word, they have pretty much kept it. Apart from minor ups and downs, they have kept their word. Who hasn't? The U.S. and Israel. When Iran said that they were not going to enrich uranium beyond 3.67%, that was in the JCPOA, which Trump tore up and threw away in 2018. Before that, Iran was in full compliance. They were not enriching uranium. So when they enriched it to 60%, that was a message. Looks like Trump is getting the wrong signals here. It would really help if the U.S. administration talked to people who could convince them that the way to go right now is to go for a negotiated settlement of the nuclear issue, a negotiated commitment, if needed, verified by the UN Security Council, that the U.S. and Israel will not attack Iran once again, because Iran is fed up of this war, ceasefire, shaky peace, war, ceasefire, shaky peace. I don't blame them. Who would want to live under the shadow of guns forever? The only thing left now is for the United States and Iran to negotiate on the key issues and the ones that can be resolved in a day or two, and continue a process by which other issues, including reparations and unfreezing of assets, go forward. Release some of the sanctions now, lift sanctions on Iran, let Iran, whatever they propose in their proposal, I don't have my hands on that yet, but talk, 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 talk. Talk until you are sick of talking, because the alternative is absolutely intolerable. That's all from me today.